Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in the month of July. July was a pretty average reading month for me. I read 13 books and my average rating of those books was a 3.27. As always, I'm going to be going in order from my least favorite to my most favorite. I usually start with talking about all the books I DNF'd, but I kind of DNF'd a lot of books this month and I don't really feel like talking about them because some of them I barely even started and I don't have a lot to say. Some of them just weren't for me. So if you're curious, I'll show you. These are the 4 books that I DNF'd this month, including The Old Woman with a Knife, Death at Morning House, A Mask of Flies, and Little Rot. I'm kind of debating just stopping talking about books I DNF because I don't feel like I have much value to bring when I talk about them in general. So let me know what you think of that down below. Do you find it interesting to hear about the books people DNF? Do you just kind of want to know what I've tried, but you don't necessarily need to hear the explanation for why? Or are you okay if I just like cut out DNFs and we just talk about the books that I read? Let me know. So now getting into the books that I did complete. I had quite a few 2-star reads this month. These aren't necessarily in any kind of order of enjoyment, but just gonna start with all of my 2 stars in the order that I have them in my reading spreadsheet. First up is Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I planned on releasing a video where I read this book because I was going to continue my series that I do of TikTok Made Me Read It, and I was going to try reading cowboy romance books, and this is the book I decided to pick up for that because it was the one that sounded the most up my alley, like the one that I had the most chance of enjoying, and I've seen a lot of people enjoying this book, and also the cover really intrigued me, which is kind of a superficial reason to pick up a book, I guess, but I just really like the art style of these covers, and I could see myself reading the series and having them on my shelves and loving them. Unfortunately, I did not like this book. I ended up giving it a 2-star, and because of that, because the reading vlog was dedicated to that book, I thought, well, I can either expand on this and try to read more cowboy romance books and, you know, really try to read more of that subgenre, or I can just cancel the video because I don't really want to release a video just telling you that I hated this book. And that was the truth of it. It just wasn't for me. I think I very definitively answered the question for myself of, do I care about cowboy romance books? No, I don't. I was feeling a little bit of FOMO because it's really popular right now. A lot of people are loving cowboy romances, and I wanted to give it a try to see if I could enjoy it. I didn't think I would, based on just things I know about my own personal preferences, and like I grew up in the South, I was around a lot of cowboys. That's just not my lifestyle, my preferences, which is fine, and a romance doesn't have to align all the time with my preferences, but I don't know, for me, a romance, I like to be rooting for the couple. I like to not insert myself in the characters necessarily, but like that happens with anything that you read, is you kind of insert yourself in the characters a little bit, and if I'm not finding the main love interest attractive and interesting, then I'm not enjoying the romance, and I don't have a thing for cowboys. So it's like, it's not working for me. I'm happy that subgenre works for so many people, but that was the main reason that I just didn't enjoy this book. I also didn't think the writing was that great, just in general as a book. There weren't a lot of plot points. I feel like it set some things up, but then didn't actually follow that through. It's kind of like a taboo sort of romance because it's a woman and then her older brother's best friend, but it wasn't actually that taboo. Kind of no one really cared. And I just felt like it could have set up all these things and all these hijinks and shenanigans, and it just didn't really do that. And it just ended up not being for me. But if you like cowboy romances, it seems like the cowboy romance crowd really enjoys this one. So, you know, still give it a shot. It just wasn't for me. I also did not enjoy Incidents Around the House by Josh Mallerman, and this one I'm seeing such good reviews for. People are loving this. People are saying it's so scary. People are loving the audiobook. Like, I am seeing so much positive feedback about this book, and I just simply do not get it. And I have loved books from Josh Mallerman before. That's a possibility for me. I know I like him as an author. I just did not like this book. The concept of this one is that you're following the point of view of a child who I believe is 8 years old, somewhere around there, and she has this entity who is coming to her that she calls Other Mommy, and Other Mommy is asking if the child will let her into her heart, kind of like a reincarnation, possession type of thing. And so as the reader, you're following that haunting situation, wondering if it's going to take place, and then following the family trying to get this thing to go away. Personally, I just found this story boring. I just was not invested in this. I just didn't really like it. I don't really have a ton to say about it. I did vlog my experience reading it, so you can check that out. It was in my Summerween vlog, I believe, but it was just one I didn't get. I just didn't really like it that much. I was very surprised to hear so many people are loving it a lot. So again, kind of just seems like a personal miss for me. If you were interested, maybe still check it out. I also featured my experience reading The Murder After the Night Before in my Summerween reading vlog, and this was also a 2-star read. I was really disappointed because I also featured this book in a video I did where I was trying the first chapter of a bunch of different audiobooks. This was included in that video, and it had a first chapter that really hooked me. I really liked the character voice. I thought it would be witty and funny and just like right up the alley of what I'm looking for right now. And unfortunately, it was another one where I just found the story kind of boring. In this story, we're following the main character after a night where she gets really drunk and doesn't fully remember what happened. She wakes up in bed with a stranger. She has gone viral on the internet for something horrible, and her best friend and roommate is dead. Throughout the story, she's trying to uncover what happened to her roommate while also dealing with a lot of the horrible circumstances for which she has gone viral on the internet. In general, I think this story was fine and the audiobook experience was fine, especially when I'm listening to an audiobook. I'm a little bit less critical because it's a little bit easier to digest. And while I spend the same amount of time reading physically as I do on audio, something about the experience, I'm like, oh, well, you know, I just passed the time, so it was okay. So I think it was fine. It's just not a book I would necessarily go out of my way to recommend. I know this author has another book that has a similar kind of quirky title. I don't think I'm gonna go out of my way to pick that up, but I think this is an author that I'll keep on my radar. I also read Boys in the Valley during Summerween, and I also gave it 2 stars. And again, it's just another book that I found boring. All the books that I didn't enjoy this month, I feel like I sound like a broken record, but it was just because I found them boring and they just weren't necessarily my style. They weren't capturing my attention. I was looking forward to reading something from Philip Fracassi because I've read a short story or 2 from him in the past, so I was looking forward to checking out one of his novels, and I don't think that I should have started here. This book was just not something that I was really set up to enjoy. I don't love possession stories and supernatural paranormal stories that go in this direction. It's a story where you're following a bunch of orphan boys who are living at this Catholic orphanage, and evil takes over. Evil takes root in the orphanage. It's a possession story. It's a coming of age story. I think the writing is great. I think Philip Fracassi is a very talented writer, but the actual story and the concept for this one is just not something that I personally found super interesting. So I will be checking out more from him. This one was just not in my interest. And then a book that was in my interest that I should have enjoyed, but I didn't because I think it was a little bit of a mess, is Death in the Air. I read this book on audiobook. I was very much looking forward to it. I think it got compared to like Glass Onion and maybe White Lotus as some of the comp titles. Death in the Air is also a title of an Agatha Christie novel. I think it was also compared to Agatha Christie. And this book did feel like an Agatha Christie. Not that I've read a ton of Agatha Christie. I think I've read maybe 2 Agatha Christie novels, maybe 3. But just that old style feel to it, that slow moving feel, that what is the plot kind of feel, that author's trying to pull one over on you kind of feel. The essence of Agatha Christie definitely was felt in this book. Okay, I'm looking back at the synopsis. It says, The White Lotus meets Knives Out meets Crazy Rich Asians in this devilishly entertaining debut novel, both a sophisticated locked room mystery in the tradition of Agatha Christie and a provocative literary whodunit for the 21st century. That is what I want to read. That blurb is the book I want. If you have books that fulfill that, let me know. I want to read that. I don't feel like I got that from this story. The main character of the story is Ro Krishna. He is very well-to-do and quite pretentious, as are most of the characters in this novel, which I don't always mind. Sometimes I like pretentiousness. Sometimes I like pretentious characters. I like having characters that I don't like sometimes. But in this case, I didn't like that I didn't like anyone in the story. And there was just a lot that I didn't like about this story. I think it was clunky. I think the setup was kind of strange. It starts with you find out that he just got fired from his job, or he left his job under these weird circumstances. It was kind of a high profile job, and he is feeling very angry at his former boss. And he's kind of talking to someone about what to do about that. And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna go on this really fancy vacation at this luxury spa. And he goes to the luxury spa, and then someone dies, and then it's a murder mystery from there. I haven't actually read Death in the Air by Agatha Christie, so I don't know how much it plays on that story, and maybe I would have had a better experience if I had read that and understood what I was getting myself into a little bit. I just found the story to be quite boring. I think the pacing of it was clunky. I didn't feel like I was invested in these characters. And it was a shame because when it first started, I liked the framing of what was going on and like his anger towards his boss, but then you really lose that and you get pulled into this completely different other story that's going on. And so it made everything from the beginning where I was feeling like, oh, this writing style is a little bit unique. I kind of like it. It's kind of different. It made it go from that to being like, oh, I don't like that. I don't like the way the story is structured. I don't feel like I'm getting, you know, that provocative literary whodunit that I thought I would be getting. I don't know. I haven't seen any of the reviews for this one yet. I haven't really sought out reviews, but I do kind of want to see what kind of impression this is getting. Maybe it was just me, but I was disappointed. I just realized I've completely neglected my stack of books that I've had sitting here. I didn't hold up a single book I was talking about. Some of those I owned. And of course, the next book I need is at the very bottom of my ginormous stack. Next up is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I ended up giving this one a 2.5 star. I think for the general literary crowd, the people who read a couple books a year, who are looking for an atmospheric mystery for the summer, I think you'll think this is fine. I had some pretty high expectations for it based on the reviews that I was hearing for it, and then I read it and I was like, yeah, that's fine. It was fine. This is a mystery that is set at this summer camp, and many years ago there was this boy who went missing in the woods. Now in present day, his sister is attending the camp and then she goes missing. And you're following many different points of view in the story for people who were involved in the past, people who are involved in the present, as you're trying to find out what happened to this missing girl, but also see if you can get any closure for what happened to her missing brother, and potentially are they connected. The writing of this was very good. It was good character building. It was very atmospheric. The tone was good. It was a well-written book. I just thought it was not a great mystery. It was very slow, very drawn out, pretty boring, and I felt like there were too many characters, too many things to follow, that it made the pacing go so slow versus if it had been shrunken down. It's also a pretty long book, and I just ended up not being super invested in the mystery, so it was not very satisfying, didn't have much of a payoff for me. That's why I gave it a 2.5, because it was a 2-star experience, but the writing was good, so I bumped it up a little bit, and I think it's gonna have general appeal, but for a mystery reader, someone who reads a ton of mysteries, tons of thrillers, it was a little bit of a letdown for me. Next up is an arc I read for a book that is coming out in August, and that is called The Plus One. I think this was a pretty fun summer thriller. It is set in Cabos. There's a wedding. Right before the wedding, the bride and the groom are found murdered, and one of the wedding guests, who has some mysterious circumstances, is trying to solve what happened. I like the setup for this. I like the mystery concept of it, and I like how you're following this plus one attendee at the wedding, and she's the one who's trying to solve what's going on, and I like what you learn about her, and I found those things interesting. I ended up giving this book a 3-star because about halfway through, the direction that it takes wasn't necessarily my favorite, and then it got really consumed in that, and I don't know, I just didn't like the way it all played out and the concept of what the mystery started to follow. But it was a quick read, and it was my first thing from this author, so now I have a new author who will be on my radar, and I think if you're looking for just a quick, fun summer thriller, this would be a good one to pick up. Next up is The Man Who Died Twice. I gave this book a 4-star, so this is the start of my 4-star reads. This is the second book in the Thursday Murder Club series. I gave the first book in the series a 3.5, and this one I enjoyed a little bit more. The concept of the series is that you're following these 4 friends who are living in a retirement community, and they like to solve mysteries together, and then it starts getting a little closer to home. The mysteries that they start solving, their lives start to be put in danger. It's a lot of hijinks, a lot of witty humor, and just a really good time. In this story, you have a new mystery that the group of them are trying to solve, and their lives become endangered in different ways. I just found it a little bit more fun than the first book. I think I was a little bit more connected to the characters in this story, and the mystery definitely had me invested, but what I was most invested in this story is the characters and the dynamics between them and how they start to grow and evolve, and just revisiting them. It kind of felt like seeing some old friends and catching up with them. So I'm really enjoying reading this series, and I do plan on continuing with the next one in August. Next is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I listened to this one on audiobook through my library, and I've been wanting to try out something from Kennedy Ryan because I hear her name come up a lot in the romance community, and I'm dabbling in the waters of romance a little bit more this year. So this was my first Kennedy Ryan, and I gave it a 4-star, so Good sign. This is a second chance romance, and it is the most intense second chance romance that I have ever read because you're following a couple who was married, had kids together, and divorced, and now they might have a second chance at a romance after a divorce. I was struggling with that a little bit in the beginning. I will be honest. I was having trouble envisioning how you come back from divorce. I don't know that I personally know anyone who has gone through that. I can't imagine myself going through that. A divorce just feels like a really big commitment. A marriage is a really big commitment. A divorce is a really big commitment. And divorce can be really messy and painful as well, especially with children involved. So that was taking some time for me to wrap my mind around. But I now understand why people talk about Kennedy Ryan, because there's a lot of talent there. I was very invested in this story. The character work done in this, these people felt so real to me. I felt like these are people that I have known for years, and I just got so invested in seeing how it was all going to play out. And this was a very emotional romance book. It wasn't cutesy, funny, silly. There were some funny moments, which I really enjoyed having those moments just to lighten up the mood a little bit. But it was kind of a hard read because there was a lot of trauma and a lot of emotional work that had to be done for these two characters to come back together. I personally enjoy finding romances that have a lot of real life circumstances, a lot of real life emotion, real life challenges. So I liked that, but just important to know, I think, because sometimes a romance is cutesy and fun and sometimes it's emotional and heavy, and this is on the emotional and heavy side. I do want to continue in the series. I actually have the next book on audiobook through my library available, but I keep finding myself having a hard time putting it on and starting it because I'm worried about the emotional experience. I'm like, am I ready to go through that again? Because that was like hard. Like, it was very emotional to be in this audiobook experience. And so I'm having some hesitation, like getting back into that mood again. I want to read some lighter stuff before I pick up the next one. So it was a good time, but it was a difficult time as well. Next up is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I was reading this with my friend Elizabeth for her book club, and Gabby from Gabby Reads joined as well. So we do have a discussion that is live on Elizabeth's channel, Reading Riley, which I'll have linked down below if you want to check that out and hear all of our thoughts. This is sort of a take on the cursed film subgenre. The concept of this one is that there was this movie being made back in 1993, and it was kind of a low budget art house horror movie that was being made with this group of people. And the story is about this group of 4 teens. 3 of them kind of gang up on one of them, take him to the school, kind of bully him. And that guy is known as the Thin Kid, and he is your main character of the story. Many years later, now in present day, he is the only surviving cast member or crew member from when that film was being made. Everyone has died since then, and the film actually never even got put out. There were just a couple clips that ended up being released on the internet, and so it became this like cult classic kind of thing. People really like to talk about it and speculate it because of the circumstances of the movie, which remain a mystery to you as a reader for a very long time. But now in the present day, the guy who played the Thin Kid, who goes unnamed in the story, so that's why I just keep calling him the guy who played the Thin Kid, is being pulled in for a reboot of the movie. He's going to reprise his old role and help bring the film back together. But a lot of this book, what you're actually reading is the flashbacks of when the film was originally being made, and then portions of the script, so you're actually seeing the movie come through, and then a little bit of the reboot experiences in here as well. I had to take a brief intermission because my camera batteries were all dead. But I was telling you about Horror Movie. In case I didn't already say, I ended up giving this a 4-star. I really enjoy Paul Tremblay's work. I've read 5 things from him now, I think, and everything I read, I've given him a 4 or a 5-star. He has a very particular writing style. He writes in a very ambiguous way. He doesn't really spoon feed you. You can kind of take away a lot of different things from his work. And I feel like that's really unsatisfying to a lot of people. So you either like it or you don't. I'm someone who really likes it. One of the main things I took away from this story is just this concept of how horror is so personal for the viewer, for the reader, for the writer. There's a little bit of meta-ness in this. It's a lot of like the movie blending with reality and getting lost in it, and just a lot of weirdness. And I had a really good time with it. The remaining 3 books I have to talk about were my 5-star reads of the month, and I think I have told you about all of these already because I did a video in the month of July where I was just telling you about a lot of mystery books I've really loved recently, and these 3 all made it on the list. First, we have Swiped by L.M. Chilton. This is a story about this woman who has recently gone on a string of dates after meeting some guys on a dating app. And then very strangely, all the guys she's gone on dates with die in the order in which she's dated them. So she ends up getting involved in the investigation to figure out why this is happening and what's going on. I love the concept of this one and I thought it was so fun. I love the writing style. It was just exactly the type of mystery that I love. I really like the way that the story unfolded and the structure of the story, how you're learning more about the dates as the story continues, and as people keep dying, then you kind of go back in time and see what happened on their date and see if you get any clues that help lead to your understanding of what could be going on. I will say I didn't absolutely love the explanation, like the final reveal of the mystery, but I had such a good time with this book otherwise that it got the 5-star. Next is Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. This is the second novel I've read from Angie Kim and I love this one just as much as Happiness Falls. This is a story about this family of Korean immigrants who are living in America, and the family starts up this business where they're doing this like oxygen therapy tank situation. They call it a submarine, and it's this kind of therapy where I guess you can get more oxygen. I feel like there's hyperbaric chamber is a word that's used to explain it. A pressurized oxygen chamber that patients enter for therapeutic dives. Most of the clientele include parents of children with autism, but there's also some other people who come. Like there's a guy who's been having infertility issues who's coming for the treatment as well. And then one day this tragedy happens where the facility explodes and some of the people die, and the mystery follows what happened to cause that event. There's a courtroom case going on a year later, so you're following that and you're jumping back in time and you're seeing different perspectives and piecing together the whole story of what went on. I think Angie Kim is such a talented writer. I get so immersed in her stories and I feel like she does a really good job handling a lot of different themes and weaving them together into being a really powerful narrative. I love when an author can explore a lot of different themes and it feels cohesive, and I think she has a really strong skill for that. I also feel like her character work is really good and her characters always feel so real to me, and she is writing more literary mysteries, so if you like a mystery with a really sharp writing style and some heavier themes behind it, I definitely recommend checking out something from Angie Kim. And finally, I have The Appeal by Janice Hallett. This is my second book from Janice Hallett now, and so far, both 5 stars for the books that I've read from her, just like Angie Kim. This is a story that's told entirely in mixed media, so it's told in the format of text messages, emails, written letters, and all of these pieces come together to give you a mystery about this group of people who all are involved in a local theater group. And the guy at the top who kind of organizes and oversees this group one day sends out an email about his granddaughter, who is a 2-year-old girl who has recently been diagnosed with cancer and is seeking this unique kind of treatment that's going to cost a lot of money. So they launch an appeal doing fundraisers to try to raise money for Poppy. Throughout the story, someone dies, you have 15 suspects, and you're trying to piece together what happened by reading all of these messages and files and letters. I cannot imagine having the kind of talent that it takes to do something like this and tell an effective, immersive story that feels like it has a cohesive narrative just from all these little pieces from all these different people and making it something that you can follow along with. I don't know how Janice Hallett is doing it. I admire her for it. I think she crafts really interesting mysteries. I've just really been enjoying her stuff this year, so I cannot wait to read more from her. Also, if you've been keeping up with my videos and you saw me read The Black Maybe in one of my vlogs, I think the Summerween vlog, earlier this month, and you're curious why this didn't make it on the wrap up, it's because I haven't finished it yet. I have a couple more stories to go in here. I actually haven't picked it up since Summerween. I don't know why. I just haven't been in the mood for it, so I'm gonna try to finish it in August, just whenever I feel like reading some short stories from this. But so far, I was mostly enjoying it. There were some stories I didn't love, but for the most part, I was having a good time. And then if you're curious for an update on my Throne of Glass journey, because I've been trying to read one book in the Throne of Glass journey all year long. It's my first time reading the series. I was reading Queen of Shadows, which is the fourth book in the series. I was reading this in the month of July, did not quite finish. It's a longer one. It's over 600 pages, but I made some good progress and I will definitely be finishing it in August, so you can look forward to an update on this very soon. So that's a wrap on all the books I read in the month of July. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you think about them, but that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!